made a lot of mistakes when I first started budgeting. So here are 5 tips for brand new budgeters. And before I get started, I just want to say that if it takes you time to find your rhythm with this and to find the budgeting method that works best for you, that's perfectly fine. What matters most is that you're putting in the effort to improve your financial situation. And if you're budgeting because you're struggling with something very specific, a lot of financial issues take a long time to get yourself out of. So don't expect results to happen overnight. It's going to take time to improve your situation. Tip number 1 is to be absolutely thorough when reviewing and setting up your budget. So let's just say you've never budgeted before. So you want to get everything together that you spent money on the past couple of months. So if you don't spend a whole lot of cash and you only use, your debit card for everything, which is great because that means you're not using credit cards, you're going to need your bank statement. If you use your debit card and cash, you're going to want your bank statement as well as receipts for what cash you spent money on. I tend to budget anything for my credit cards separately. Now, I have 3 credit cards right now. One's for gas, one's for groceries, one is for personal care items. They have a set purpose, and I pay it off every single month, so they don't really need their own budget. But if you are setting up a budget for the first time, you really want to get the full picture of what you're spending, where you're spending, what account it's coming out of, etc., so you can figure out what budget makes sense. I would personally recommend setting up a budget that covers everything. Once you are more comfortable with it and you kind of get a system in place, like I do for my credit cards, then maybe your budget can just include your checking account or just include your cash or, however you want to do it. But if you are first starting out, get every single thing that you are spending money on. Write it down, plug it into a computer, whatever method you use, but you really want to get a full picture of what you're spending in a typical month. If you don't have all the information in front of you when you set up your budget, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure to a degree because you're not looking at the full picture. So make sure that you're as thorough as possible. Tip number 2, decide what you want to improve about your finances before you even get started. I think it's really important to have a very clear goal in mind. I want to get back on track with my credit cards. I want to get back on track with my car note. I want to pay this amount of debt off early. I want, whatever it is. If there is something really specific that's a financial goal for you, make sure you have that in mind when you are setting up your budget. Now, if you want to accomplish something by a certain date, my only advice there is to be thorough. Basically, what your goals are can have a major impact on how you budget. Now, don't get me wrong, I think it's perfectly fine to start budgeting if you're not quite sure what your financial goals are yet, or maybe you don't have a major financial concern. That's not a reason to not budget, so by all means get started. But if you do have any type of stress related to your finances or specific goal related to your finances, you definitely want to keep that in mind when you set up your budget. So let's say, for example, your goal is to pay off your car note early. So that's going to be something you want to budget extra for. If your car note payment is $400, you might want to budget $450 or $475 each month to pay it off. If it's within your budget, maybe you can pay $500. You don't want to give yourself too big of a budget in a particular category if you're not sure that you can meet it. In other words, when you're budgeting, you need to look at the whole picture and figure out what amounts make sense for each category. So if your goals are not clear, you're going to have a little bit of a harder time doing that. Tip number 3, decide if paper or digital budgeting is best for you. This might not seem like a big deal, but what you use for your budgeting does matter. If you buy a budgeting planner and you're thrilled about it, you're excited to use it, and you start using it and realize it's not quite the setup that you need, I would recommend replacing it. Don't go overboard money-wise, and if you need to stick to just a notebook so you can set up how you want for a while, that's fine too. But if you're utilizing something that does not fit your financial needs, you're just going to end up frustrated, but also you're going to want to give up on budgeting. It's going to feel like, okay, budgeting just isn't for me. Is it that budgeting isn't for you, or is it that you don't have the right tools available to you? Now, I prefer paper planning for a couple of reasons, but the main one and the most important one is that writing all of it down is what makes me think more about the money I'm spending and how I'm handling my money. It's kind of the effect of using cash envelopes versus credit cards for everything. Even if you're using a debit card instead of a credit card, if you're swiping your card, you're just not thinking as much about what you're spending. It's a little bit less real to you. But when you put money in an envelope, when you take money out of that envelope to spend on it, you're so much conscious of how much money you're actually spending. There's a very similar effect when you take pen to paper and you write everything down related to your expenses. So that is the main reason that I prefer paper planning. I love my Erin Condren budget planner. There are a few other, paper budget planners I will probably use at some point. But the reality is, it's not just about liking a particular type of paper or liking a particular type of planner. I know that psychologically I'm taking the steps necessary so that I can track my finances effectively. I am thinking about my money in the right way. Tip number 4 is do not set unrealistic goals for yourself. Now, this one can be difficult because if you have things that you want to overcome, you're going to want to set this big, massive goal. Now, if a big, massive goal is accomplishable for your situation, then maybe you can set that goal. But I know for me in the past, I would write down a goal. It was completely unrealistic. I wasn't going to be able to actually do it. But because I wrote it down, it was really important to me that I got there. And then I didn't get there. And I didn't really know what to do with it. And I would be discouraged. And then I just wouldn't even set a goal for the next couple of months. And I don't think that's a positive thing either. Honestly, when it comes to finances, I don't think you necessarily need a goal for every single month. If I set a goal, it will usually be a personal one. And don't get me wrong, if you're someone who is not really discouraged when you fail to meet a goal, then maybe this one is not all that helpful to you. But for me personally, I know that if I would write down a goal, it would be very important to me that I would make it. How to set goals that are realistic for your situation is a whole other conversation. But the bottom line is if your goal is unrealistic, you're not going to meet it, and then you're just going to feel more discouraged. And tip number 5 is to close out your budget every single month or every single paycheck if you budget that way, and actually apply what you learned. So what I mean by this is that you are actually looking at any mistakes you may have made in your spending. Some of it might have just been thoughtless. You didn't mean to go over budget in a certain category, and you did. You forgot about something because it was on autopay that you meant to cancel. Or you were within budget on an item, but you realize you still could have made that budget category a little bit lower. Every time you properly close out your budget, you look at all of the information in front of you, you look at what you did, you look at what maybe you could have done, you are gathering valuable data about your own financial habits. It's telling you whether you're overspending, it's telling you how good you are at sticking to a budget, it's telling you what could possibly be changed about your budget, it's telling you what you could improve about your spending. I've been budgeting for a while, and just this month, even as of right now, as of filming, it's April 7th. I can already think of a few things I could have done differently at the start of the month. They're not drastic, they're not anything that's going to wreck me for the rest of the month, don't get me wrong, but there's still things that I could have improved on. Every single time that I've improved something about my finances, it's because I took the time to close out my budget and review how I was spending my money. That is the information that gave me valuable insights into what I was doing. Because a lot of times when you're on the go and you're just getting things that you need or getting things that you think you need or getting things that you want because you need a little treat or whatever, you're not thinking about it in the moment. I don't know about y'all, but that's how I am a lot of the times. I'm not really thinking about everything I'm spending until I'm actually sitting down and looking at everything I spent and going, okay, that makes sense. That was over budget, but there was a reason. There was not a reason for this line right here. There was not a reason for this line right here. I could have spent a little bit less in this category. That information is what's going to change your financial habits. And honestly, if you are setting up a budget, but you are not closing it out at the end of the month, you are not reviewing it, there's almost no point in setting one up to begin with. Because you don't even know how successful you're being. You don't even know whether you're doing a good job or not at sticking to your budget, for each category. Setting up a budget and then following through and closing out that budget is your way of learning about your own financial habits, learning how you're spending money, and most importantly, learning how you can improve. I hope these tips were helpful if you are brand new to budgeting. I know that for me, I've applied all of these, and I know that for me, they made a massive difference. I did not film closing out my budget for March. I will not be doing a budgeting or a budget closing out video for April. My next budget setup video should be for May. Basically, I like to use real numbers in my budgeting videos, so if there's anything that's personal I don't really want to share, I'd rather just not do the budgeting video at all, as opposed to just having to blur out some lines or something like that. That's just not really my style. In the meantime, if anyone has any other tips for new budgeters, I would love to see you leave a comment and hear what you have to say.